Alright, so today I want to talk about reptile thermostats, and that is the thing that controls the temperature on the hot side of your reptile enclosure. And if you keep ball pythons like I do, I keep quite a few ball pythons, you need something to control the temperature of the heat strip or the heat mat on the hot side. And really what it is it's a really thin piece of plastic that heats on the hot side, and you just can't plug it into the wall. You really need to take that, plug it into a thermostat, and take the probe of the thermostat, put it on the heat pad, and dial in the temperature with the thermostat. And you know, at first it sounds pretty easy. You know, it seems like all thermostats would control the temperature of the hot pad. What is the big deal? What's the difference between all these thermostats? And probably in my ball python breeding operation here, I'd say I have at least a couple $1,000s invested in some really high-end thermostats. And as a matter of fact, I was going through and I have like almost a dizzying array of all kinds of different thermostats, all the way from the really cheap ones all the way to the high end. And I kind of wanted to bring you through, and this will be just like an introduction as far as, you know, some of the pros and cons. And what I'll do is I'll show you the thermostat, pretty much show you what I'm using that thermostat for to control the temperature. And you know, I have a whole bunch of stuff. I have not only the hot spots on my reptiles, I also have heat strips for my display cases at the shows. I have the enclosure for Lucy out on my pool table. I have my incubator. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I use temperature controllers, the thermostats, for to control the hot spots. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of go, I think I'm gonna go from the low end, start at the low end and go all the way from the high end. I'll just quickly show you the thermostat and what I'm using it for, and kind of scroll through the menu and show you some of the options. Some of them have a lot of really detailed, in-depth options, and some of them are real simple with no options at all. So let's check out some thermostats. All right, I'm gonna start with my cheapest thermostat, and that would be the thermostat that controls the temperature here in my reptile room. And to control the temperature, essentially I have a little space heater. The space heater is on a thermostat, and usually I put it up on my air cleaner just because it's really noisy. Usually the space heater is sitting on the ground and it's pointing towards the air filter, so it pushes heated air into the air filter and it cleans it with layers of carbon and circulates the air throughout the room. So I actually originally had the air cleaner or the heater on this little Jumpstart controller, and these Jumpstarts are great. It's about the cheapest thing you can get. You just have 3 buttons. You hit the set button. This is actually set at 82 degrees, and it's kind of flashing on the film. It normally doesn't flash. It's, you know, it's essentially solid numbers. It's because of the frame rate on my camera that is flashing. But you can actually set it, and then once it's blinking right now, and you can actually set it to 83, 84, any temperature you want. So, and then hit set again, and it's right now it's set at 80 degrees. That's how you set it. And it just has one option, one set point, and that's it. The problem with the Jumpstart is it's not rated for a 1500 watt space heater. And I actually burned 2 of these out before I realized, you know, it's not the Jumpstart that's the problem. It's because I'm plugging in too high of a wattage of a heater into that. They're not rated for 1500 watts. And the problem is when they fail on the on position. So when this thing went out, I had my space heater plugged in here. That space heater was on high, and I came in here, it was like 92 degrees. It was kind of ridiculous. So then after I realized what I was doing, I was burning these out, I switched over to this. This is a greenhouse thermostat, and it's a little K control. It's actually a manual. It's not a digital. It's like a manual thermostat. You set the temperature here, and it essentially has no other settings at all. You just set the temperature here, and then on the plug, you just plug in the plug. On the plug, it actually has another plug-in that you can plug into on the plug. It's for actually the space heater. So these are pretty much the easiest, the most basic ones you can get. This one, I definitely recommend getting this one if you can find it. These are really hard to get. As a matter of fact, Amazon doesn't even have these. I had to search somewhere else to get the greenhouse thermostat. And I actually have several of them. I use them for, I have a little space heater in my laundry room. I turn this down to about 40 degrees. And if it gets, you know, if something happens and it gets really cold in my laundry room, this will actually come on with a space heater and it'll warm the pipes before the pipes freeze. That's kind of what I use it for. And these Jumpstarts are really great. I would say I have one of these on my tarantula enclosure upstairs. I would definitely recommend a Jumpstart. The only problem with the Jumpstart is if you set it at 80 degrees, the temperature swing is really big. So it's essentially an on-off thermostat. It'll go all the way down to like 78 before it kicks on, and then when it kicks on, it'll stay on until it's like at 82. So it's got this huge swing from, you know, like 78 to 82, where it keeps going up and down and up and down, and it doesn't really hold the temperature really precise. But I'd say for a really cheap temperature controller, that's pretty much as good as you can get. It doesn't have any alarms or anything if something goes wrong, but you know, that's kind of the entry level that most people start with, is the Jumpstart. All right, so I just checked the wattage on my Jumpstart, and it looks like it's a maximum of 1,000 watts that you can plug into the Jumpstart. And if you want something a little bit nicer, you can move up to a VE100. This actually has a lower maximum wattage. This is actually a maximum of 700, but it does have more bells and whistles on it. It has more of a menu program and an up and a down button here. So if you hit the menu button, you can go into the daytime temperature, and I have it actually set on 90, and you can move it up and down with these buttons here and then hit enter. And this sets the temperature. Actually, I think I set it to 91. I want it back on 90. And then you can kind of scroll through the menu here. It has a night drop amount. So the night drop amount actually, you actually have to set the daytime, you have to set the time first in order to get the night drop. And I don't have the time set up in here because I don't use a night drop. The time is wrong on here, so it doesn't really have a night drop. As a matter of fact, I don't use a night drop on any of my ball pythons, and they breed just fine. The stimulation for breeding is adding the male to the female's tum, and I never use a night drop. And the other thing that's interesting that it has, you can move over to hysteresis. I'm not sure how to say that. Hysteresis. So hysteresis is essentially what that is right now it's 1 degrees Fahrenheit. So what happens is that means when it gets down to 89, the thermostat kicks on, and then when it goes up to 91, it shuts off. So it goes up and down between 89 and 91, kind of an on-off. And you can actually set the hysteresis to a higher number. So for example, if you set it to 5 degrees, and then what would happen is at 85 degrees it would turn on, and at 95 it would turn off. So there'd be a huge difference in the hysteresis setting. So I didn't actually set it, so it should be still at 1. So you definitely want it at 1 because you don't want that huge of a swing between your on and your off. I can see if you had it hooked up to something where, you know, you turned on like an air conditioner or a furnace or something, you didn't want it cycling on and off all the time. You can actually set it to a larger gap in there, but for what I'm doing right here to power these heat strips, I definitely just want to keep it at 1 degree. All right, so the next thermostat I want to show you is a Herpstat 2. It actually has 2 zones, and the top zone is 1 zone. It basically controls all these, and then the bottom is slightly different for the 2 BOA tubs, so I put them on a separate zone. And let me show you what the Herpstat 2 looks like. This is the Herpstat 2. This is what it looks like. And this one I would say is not as user friendly. I was kind of going through the options, and let me tell you, it's a little bit complicated. I'm going to turn out this light, and then we can kind of see the screen here. So it has a button on the left and then an up-down button on the right. So I actually just changed this to 90 degrees. It was set at 85 for some reason. I'm not sure why it was set so low. so let me show you. If you press the menu button, it goes to the output 1 configuration, and you can actually configure output 1 or 2. So if you configure output 1, I click back on the enter button. And then the mode, you can have the daytime temperature, which is set at 90. And then you can have the night cycle options, so you can actually have a night cycle drop. I don't have the night cycle drop. You can have the high and low alarms. So if you have, you can set it, for example, if it goes too high or too low, you can specify. If it goes a little high or a little low, you can kind of dial in. Sensor adjustment, you can adjust your sensor, you can adjust the maximum power. And that is the output 1 configuration. Output 2 configuration, this is for zone 2. And then for system setup, you can have the display type in Fahrenheit or Celsius. You can have the brightness, so you can change the brightness of the LCD. I'll turn it down a little bit for the video. You can enable the system sounds or disable them. So if I disable the sounds, master reset, you can set the system time, set the date, and I don't set the time of the date because I don't have a night drop and it doesn't really matter. So this is, you can have a security passcode so no one can break into your Herpstat too. You can have the safety setup on air shutdown. You can include or exclude the high-low input output. So let's see what else we have here. So that is pretty much the setup there, and you can, you know, it's I would say it's a lot more difficult to control, to kind of program it. The menu is a little bit more complicated, but it is a really nice thermostat. All right, so this is a VE300 that I just unboxed, and essentially what it comes with is it comes with the probe, and this is where you put it, the probe on your heat strip. Plugs in with kind of a phone cord connection, and it does not like it when I unplug the cord. You plug it right in the probe connection, and then this plugs right into your electric, and then what you do is you plug your heat pad right into here, or whatever you're controlling, right into here, and that is pretty much it. So on this one, it's essentially pretty much the same. Let's see, it's not liking, it doesn't like it that I unplugged the probe. So this one essentially is very similar to the VE100, and if you kind of go through the menu options, it has, you see it has the daytime temperature, the night drop amount, it has on this one the time of day. This one actually has different heating modes. This one will actually do pulses like the Herpstat 2. It'll just keep pulsing and pulsing to control the temperature, or let's see, let's go back to the heating mode. It'll do a pulse, or it will do a dim. In the dim mode, what it'll do is it'll just decrease the heat a little bit. And the VE100, essentially, it was an on-off, on-off. So it basically would turn, off at a certain temperature, and then it would turn on at a certain temperature. This one, in the pulse mode, it's constantly on and off and on and off, and then in the dim, it actually dims it constantly. It just kind of decreases the power. So this is completely different. The other thing I like about this is that it has, let's see, it has alarms, disable, enable alarms. So this actually has alarms where the VE100 doesn't have alarms, but the Herpstat 2 does have alarms. All right, so this is the VE300X2. It's essentially the same thing as the VE300, except it has 2 heat zones. And I actually got this for Lucy because I have an overhead radiant heat and then a bottom heat underneath. She's in a 6-foot enclosure, and I wanted wanted 2 heat zones with just 1 heat controller. And this is the first time I've actually even bought one of these. I didn't even know this existed until I got this enclosure for Lucy. So if you kind of look through here, it's essentially exactly the same. Daytime temperature, night drop amount, the start of daytime temp, start of night temp. I don't do night drops on anything across the board. You can set the time of day. You can select the heater mode, enable, disable alarms. And then this is a little bit different. It has the number of zones. So you can actually, right now I have it set to 2 zones. If you set it to 1 zone, essentially what you're doing is you're disabling one of the heat zones and you're just using one. In this case, I want to use 2 heat zones. So I just hit enter. And that's essentially all there is to it. This is the VE300X2. All right, so I have one more heat controller that actually controls this rack here. This is actually all my breeding females, and I decided when I got this that I wanted precise control over each level to make sure my females were at the perfect temperature. And what I do is I actually have a heat controller for every single level, including that big tub. And if you notice, there's actually 9 rows here, so I have 9 probes all hooked up to 3 separate heat controllers. And let me show you that. Most people would say this is definitely super overboard as far as doing a thermostat. What I actually have is a VE300 and 2 Herpstat 4s. And let me kind of give you a tour of the Herpstat 4. This is what a Herpstat 4 looks like. And if you kind of go through the menu on this, you have all these outputs 1 through 4. You have all these different settings. You can go through output 1, 2, 3, 4. You can go through the system, all the settings, the security settings, the hardware settings, and to exit the menu here. So for example, output 1, you have a mode. You can do the heat or the dimming, or you can disable it. And I think I have pulse mode. Let me go back and see what this one was. Yeah, this was actually pulse mode. So let's see, the daytime temperature, I've set at 90. The night cycle, the high-low alarm. So the high-low alarm is on. High alarm, I have at 92. So if it goes up to 92, it alarms. And the low alarm at 80. So if it goes down below 80, it alarms with and after 30 minutes, it'll actually mute, which is pretty cool. And it has all these different functions. You can adjust the sensor if it's off a little bit. You can do the max power. It has all these different options. You can go into the system, the display, the temperature, the time, the sounds. You can reset everything. And then in security, you can have a passcode 000 to disable. Passcode disabled. And then the hardware, you have a bunch of stuff here that I've never used in the hardware. It looks like you can test the hardware and a bunch of stuff like that. So essentially, that's what I have for the Herpstats. The only problem with these is that the Herpstats, if you actually unplug the unit, it won't alarm. So in addition to all this equipment here, I actually have separate alarms, really cheap alarms with a high-low temperature sensor. So if these come unplugged, my cheap alarms will actually go off and alarm. And that's the only kind of downside, is if they get unplugged, they won't actually alarm. All right, so this is my incubator here, and on my incubator for my ball python eggs, I actually have 33 eggs in here right now that are cooking. They're gonna hatch in about 2 weeks, and this is running off of a VE100. So this is Lucy's 6-foot enclosure. She is a big reticulated python. She's almost 70 pounds. You can see she is ready for a rat. She's going crazy in there. And I've been giving her rats almost every day, trying to fatten her up. And this one is on the VE300X2. So my hatchling rack, this is a ARS 1065 for it holds 65 hatchlings, kind of tucked in the back, completely empty. On that one, I'm running a VE300. So a quick review going around the room. This is 2 layers here. This is on the Herpstat 2, one on the bottom, top, and one on the bottom. This is my VE100 on my hatchling rack right here. This is an ARS 1039. And then on my breeder rack, I have 2 Herpstat 4s and a VE300. Okay, so those are the thermostats that I have here in my ball python breeding operation, all the way from the low end all the way to the high end, where you have a whole range of options. You know, I always say that, you know, I kind of want to lean towards, you know, investing in the highest thermostat that you can. It kind of gives me a higher peace of mind. You know, the low end stuff doesn't really have alarms, and it kind of cycles the temperature on and off, and you have a larger swing in temperatures, sometimes 5 or 6 degrees, where if you step up to like a dimming or a proportional or a pulse kind of a thermostat, it'll actually really dial in the temperatures to where you can have within a fraction of a degree accuracy as far as maintaining temperatures. And that's really what I wanted for my female ball pythons. As a matter of fact, if you take ball pythons and you start jumping the temperatures around, they can go off a feed really easy. So it's really essential to really dial in the temperatures and keep them consistent for breeding and feeding. And I know ball pythons kind of are really tolerant to a bunch of different temperatures, but you know, for me, it's more of a peace of mind. You know, it's pretty much you buy the thermostat, you make the investment, you set it up on the rack, and you pretty much forget about it. As a matter of fact, I was dusting off the cobwebs and the dust trying to get to my thermostats to show you, because you know, they're pretty much one of the neglected parts. You just put them up there, stick them in a corner, and forget about them. The only time you really worry about them is when they start alarming or there's something going on. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.